Hey guys, Joe Madden here, the Joe Madden Sports Podcast. It is Tuesday, August 23rd. I'm joined today by Wes Reynolds of Wiesen. Wes and I are going to be talking some college football, but first, Wes, how's the day going?
Going well. Got a bunch of shows, just a packed schedule now that we are approaching week 0. I guess that's a thing for college football now as we get more and more games. It used to be we just got like one game, that little appetizer, and now we just keep getting more and more games added to the betting board, added to the menu. So, busy time, but, better things to do. I mean, when you've got ball and betting and everything else to talk about, so everything could be worse. So it's nice to have football back and really get back into the swing of things.
Yeah, definitely a busy time, but an exciting time as well as we get back into the swing of the football season. I can't wait, and I know all of my listeners can't wait. Before we jump into the college football season, let's talk about you. What have you got going on at Wiesen right now, Wes?
Yeah, we're going to announce, I believe, our new fall lineup here either later this week or very early next week. So I'm excited for the changes. Those are going to be sent out via our Twitter at Wiesen Live and all the various channels for our subscribers, our viewers, and our listeners. So really excited. Full load going forward as we get football started and then we get into the baseball playoffs. And this is the busy time of year, and it can get overwhelming, I think, for sports bettors once we get into like the fall, September, November, or October, November, and we get into where basketball is along with football. We get into the World Series for baseball, hockey starting. So busiest time of year, but we're glad to have it.
Now, Wes, I know you were a major impact on your 2022 college football betting guide put on by Wiesen. How long did you work on this? This is a 330-page guide. This is not a small one. You've been busy for quite a while.
It takes a village to write a Wiesen college football betting guide, and that's exactly what it was. I contributed a couple different conferences. My friend and buddy Matt Humans did the same. John Von Tobel, Adam Burke, Dave Tooley, Tim Murray, everybody that wrote the conferences, and then the preseason projections, and also going into the win totals if we like any futures. So this is a very comprehensive, no stone unturned, no village unpillaged for this betting guide.
Yeah, absolutely. I've made it 80% through the guide. Not going to lie, haven't got all the way through. It was a bigger read than I expected.
You're farther than I am, actually. So.
Okay. Well, where did the love, Wes, of college football come from for you?
Yeah, because I'm from Indiana and I'm an Indiana University alum. So obviously we're a quote unquote basketball school. We haven't had a lot of college football success, but I just like it. It's so different because there still, I think, is that sense of community with college football. When you watch a lot of the pregame stuff, you watch College Game Day or the Fox NFL kickoff, and there's just something special, Joe. I think about being at a college campus on Saturday. I still think the college campus is one of the more free places in all of society. So, people free to express themselves both in a positive and negative way. And, being there in that college town and, not only the students and the faculty and the people that are part of these various college and university communities, but also when the alums come back and, just I think I get into the rah stuff. It's a little bit different, even though college sports is becoming more professional on a daily basis with the NIL and with all the sponsors and all the money involved. I mean, so it's not, I don't want to say it's totally pure, but there's still at least some kind of sense of community where it's not just totally a business like the NFL is.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have a favorite memory you want to share with the viewers of being at one of those games?
Yeah, actually, it was several years ago, and it was actually a painful memory because it was a loss. But when I was a student there, Ohio State was the #1 team in the country, and they were coming into Indiana. Indiana was a huge underdog, and they came in and Indiana took Ohio State to the limit. They laid over IU talent wise, and Ohio State ended up pulling it out late. An interception return won them the game. It was a tie game in the fourth quarter, but just to see the stadium full. Now, granted, about 20,000 seats were Ohio State Buckeye fans, but it was red nonetheless. So that's what you use in terms of the cover of the media guide, because it's like, well, we got to show a full stadium and not when we only have like 30,000 people here on a boilerplate Saturday game. So, it's just nice for that team to be competitive. But you really believed, even though you'd seen so much bad IU football, it's like, I really believe that they're going to do it. They're going to pull the upset. And then, of course, you get your heart broken. But that's when you're an Indiana football guy, you're very much used to getting your heart broken.
And a diehard one for life, correct?
Yes. Yeah, I'm not like some of these other IU fans where it's like they're Notre Dame football fans during the fall and then they come back for basketball. I'm ride or die.
I absolutely love it. Looking at this upcoming season, what are your thoughts on Georgia here? We know that they were stacked defensively last season. Do you have any hopes for them with how many players they did lose?
Well, I think you got to look at how they're recruiting and Kirby Smart, look, another top 5 recruiting class. I don't think Georgia is going to take the dip that ordinarily we would expect them to take when you lose. I think it was 15 guys this past April in the NFL draft. Usually that's going to cripple any normal program, but I don't think Georgia's a normal program. I think Georgia right now, when you look at the national championship market, there's kind of the consensus. So you might think Ohio State's 1, Alabama's 2, or Alabama's 1 and Ohio State's 2, where Georgia's kind of in that line all by themselves where they might be number 3 in the country. But I think the schedule is relatively manageable, even though Kentucky down in Lexington in late November is going to be a test. I think that team, I don't know, they don't have enough necessarily to win the SEC East, but that's a team I would lean over their win total is Kentucky, because I just think that they're going to be a lot tougher. The defense is going to be very good. Will Levis comes back for another year at quarterback, so I think the offense should be a little bit more dynamic. Kentucky was really run heavy over the last couple of years. I think they're going to be a little bit more balanced, but you just can't discount Georgia. The non-conference schedule is relatively easy, even though they have Oregon, but Dan Lanning takes over. He was the defensive coordinator at Georgia. He's now the head coach at Oregon. But you can see Georgia, they're up to like 17-point favorites in that game. I still think Oregon's a year or two away from getting back to what we are used to seeing from the Ducks program. So, yeah, I'm not selling Georgia at all.
Okay, so looking at the teams overall here, Wes, we're seeing way less returning players this season. How do you think this is going to affect us on the betting side of things?
Well, I think when you look at it, and that's a good point you bring up, Joe, because we don't have as many of the COVID extra year scholarships that we had last year. So that's one of the reasons why you saw, and I know it's absurd to say why Michigan made the playoff, because they're Michigan, one of the greatest programs in the history of college football, but they had a lot of veterans back. They had a lot of those super seniors. And then last year was kind of the perfect storm for a Cincinnati, a first, group of 5 team to make the college football playoff, because they had a lot of veteran talent back then. Were able to keep their guys to run it back instead of like, the transfer portal has changed college football pretty much year round, but it even was more of a change with the COVID extra year last year. But now a lot of these guys are gone. Some might bring, different programs have different amounts of players that they're bringing back because of that super senior year. But I think now that a lot of that is done, you're going to get the usual suspects. And that's why you're seeing Alabama is such a big favorite to make the playoff, and Ohio State is such a big favorite, and even Georgia. And then, who's going to be that number 4 team? Is it going to be Texas A&M? Is it going to be Utah? Is it going to be USC? There's like about a dozen teams that you could consider for that number 4 spot that we anticipate for the college football playoff. But I just think that, when in doubt, the talent and the cream is going to rise to the top. And now that you don't have these teams with a lot of extra super seniors, that's why you're seeing the favorites, I think, be even more pronounced than they were last year.
Okay, so is there any sleepers that you're looking at that you think we should keep on our radar that are going to pull off some upsets in this upcoming year?
A sleeper for the college football playoff, are you asking, or?
For playoffs or for the season overall as a whole that you're really looking at, you think that they've made such improvements on last year?
Yeah, this isn't really going that far down the board, but I really like Utah. I bet them at 5-1 to make the college football playoff. I don't think that they have enough to beat the 2 big boys, to beat Alabama or Ohio State, even though they were very competitive right down to the final play with Ohio State in the Rose Bowl, 48-45 final score, Buckeyes win. But I think Utah, when in doubt, I'm going to go with the team that's very well coached, and I think they're the best coached team in the Pac-12 conference. I know USC is kind of the shiny new toy with Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams and company coming in from Oklahoma, but I think Utah is the tougher team. They've got a good quarterback in Cam Rising. They've got a lot of their production back. So I do like Utah maybe to be that 4th team, because that's what we're kind of guessing here, Joe, is it's like, we feel like Alabama and Ohio State, even though you don't want to necessarily put them in, permanent Sharpie marker, we feel like they're somehow going to be in the college football playoff. And then we, lean toward maybe Georgia on the yes of who's going to be that 4th team. I think it's going to be Utah. Tough game, though, at least in week one. That game at Florida, I think, is going to tell us a lot because they are small favorites against a rebuilding Florida program. Billy Napier, his first year as the coach, comes in from Louisiana Lafayette, where he had a lot of success in the Sun Belt. So I don't think Florida, they're going to take like one step back to take two steps forward. I think going forward into like next year and the year after that. But Utah, them guys go into that Florida humidity. It's still very hot and humid down there in Florida that first weekend of September. So this is going to be a big test. But if the Utes can go down and beat a pretty good SEC program on the road, the schedule, I think, clears up for them. There's still a lot of rebuilding teams in the Pac-12. So if Utah gets that win, I think that they could absolutely get on a roll like they did last year.
It's going to be exciting to see how they do in that Florida heat. Hopefully they're able to pull that one off. Wes, is there any over-unders that you're looking at for futures for these teams?
Yeah, I did play a few win totals. A lot of them, because there's so many teams, it's like, when you got 130 teams, you can only play so many. So a lot of these numbers are going to eventually be passes. And plus the fact that they've been up for several months, you're going to lose value as the numbers get extracted and more people enter the market and bet these accordingly. But a couple teams that I was down on, because one of the conferences I wrote for the betting guide was the ACC, where Clemson, yet again, the favorite, but NC State could be a challenge. Miami, perhaps with the new coach, Mario Cristobal, coming back home to Coral Gables, they could be a challenger. But there were a couple teams, I picked off the bottom feeders, Joe, in that conference. One that I'm very under on is the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, and under 3.5. I think there's some threes out there, but you can still find some 3.5s if you lay a little bit more big. I looked at this schedule, and it almost felt like the athletic director is trying to get Jeff Collins fired because they loaded this up. You got to play Clemson in the opener. Of course, that's a conference game, but you're playing Georgia in the non-conference. You're playing UCF in the non-conference.
Just seems mean.
Yes. Yeah, it's absolutely mean. I feel like, they want this guy to lose his job so they can move on, because Collins came in. He was successful at Temple, but he replaced Paul Johnson, who ran that triple option down there in Atlanta. And you still had players as part of the Paul Johnson regime that just don't fit what Collins wants to do with the more pro-style offense. And a lot of Georgia Tech's best talent also went in the portal. Their running back, Jahmyr Gibbs, actually is going to be the starting running back for Alabama. So when you got Alabama and all these great top programs kind of picking at your talent in the transfer portal, and you don't have anybody that can replace them, I think this is going to be a rough year for Georgia Tech. So I went under on their win total. And then I also went under. This was before the Hartman news, so I can't really give it out. But Sam Hartman, the quarterback of Wake Forest, looks like he's going to miss an indefinite amount of time. I was low on Wake Forest anyway, because I think they only had 4 wins over teams with winning records last year. So they were a team I was a little bit low on. In terms of the conference, I did not bet it overall to win the conference, but I did bet Miami to win the Coastal Division. I think there's about $1.50 or somewhere in that range on the plus side where you can get the U. I just like Tyler Van Dyke a lot. I think the talent is there. They're going to be starting to recruit very well. And plus, I think Pittsburgh, who won that division last year, might take a step back, and you have new coaches in that division. Brett probably takes over at Virginia Tech. So you have some programs in that other division, the non-Clemson division, I will say, in the ACC, that are in transitions here. And Miami is too, but I think Miami getting a lot of their guys back and getting Tyler Van Dyke, who I think is a dark horse Heisman candidate, getting him going. So I like the U and Clemson to meet in that ACC title game.
Okay, I love it. Who else do you have for Heisman here?
Well, one that I bet actually last week, I was doing a show with Tim Murray, filling in on the night show here on VSiN, and we were looking at the board, and we saw Cameron Rising, the Utah quarterback.
Okay.
I think it was at Superbook here in town at Westgate, was 80-1, and I thought, wow. Team that could be a dark horse playoff contender. Look, it's easy to go with the favorites. It's easy to go with CJ Stroud. It's easy to go with Bryce Young or Bijan Robinson at Texas or somebody like that. But yeah, I thought 80-1 on Cameron Rising. That was a absolutely massive number. So he is one I played. I played Tyler Van Dyke of Miami, the quarterback, when he was 40-1. I think when he took over for De'Aaron King, when De'Aaron King got hurt last year early in the season. When he took over, he gave them a new dynamic. I know the offensive coordinator is new because Rhett Lashley is now the head coach at SMU, but Yeah, there's just the numbers. Miami just hasn't had that dynamic throwing threat in terms of a passing quarterback. They haven't had that maybe since Ken Dorsey when they last won the national championship in the early 2000s. But I think that they absolutely have it now. Van Dyke's probably going to be a first round pick in next spring's NFL draft. So those are the two I bet now. In terms of Heisman, one of the things that we now have, because it's legal here in Nevada, and then plus with more books getting legal across the country and the DraftKingses and the Bet Rivers, FanDuel, et cetera, et cetera, these things adjust throughout the year. So, it's all about, really, it's not just about picking, okay, who do you think is going to win? It's about getting number equity. So, like, if you had Kenneth Walker at Michigan State, who was well down the board, there were times late in the season he became a favorite until that game against Ohio State where they got absolutely flacked by the Buckeyes. But that's what you want to do. I think it's all about timing the market a little bit. So this is the time of year maybe to take the longer shots, to not just take the 2-to-1s and the 3-to-1s, 5-to-1, 10-to-1. This is the time to maybe try to take the 40s and the 60s and the 80-to-1s, because what you're looking for is you're just looking for line equity, and that's what you're trying to get. You're trying to beat the number to where the close is. And that's what you try to do with point spreads and totals in general.
Gotta love the value on those long shots, Wes. I want to thank you so much for breaking down what you're liking in the college football season this coming year. I'm excited for it to get kicked off. Where can people find you on Twitter and all other socials, as well as to follow your shows on VSiN?
Yeah, at Wes Reynolds and the number 1 on Twitter. And then, of course, our network at VSiN Live on Twitter. VSiN.com is where we're going to have. You can download all the betting guides and download the shows if you want to get into the archive. So all over the place. Obviously, football starting as the golf season, the regular season at least kind of winds down. You can get our Long Shots podcast that we do every week for golf. So all over the place. But yeah, definitely hit us on the tweets, hit us on the website. Love to hear the feedback from you.
Awesome. Wes, thank you so much for joining me here on the Joe Madden Sports Podcast. Have an incredible day. It was a pleasure having you on.
Joe, thanks for having me.
Thank you.